Welcome to Leaders of the West, a podcast for innovators and changemakers. I'm your host, Jessie Jarvis, the founder of the West, and I'm sitting down with agriculturalists, entrepreneurs, executives, and everyone in between with the goal of digging into the strategies, mindsets, and lessons that have been crucial to the success of ag and Western. Whether you're carrying on the next generation of your family's operation, starting something from scratch, or determined to climb up the leadership ladder, we're going to inspire you to continue to dream big, growing not just you, but the future of agriculture and Western as a whole. Let's go. Hey, before we get started on today's episode, I want to share two opportunities that are on Of the West right now. If you are looking for something in the livestock, equipment, or equine sectors of the industry, then this might be right up your alley. Over the last few months, we have been working with the American Society of Agriculture Appraisers and the American Society of Equine Appraisers to get more people interested in becoming equine, livestock, and equipment appraisers. The role of an appraiser is somebody who provides valuations as they're needed for bank appraisals, attorney and litigation appraisals, accountant appraisals, tax purposes, insurance appraisals, and government entity appraisals like for the IRS or USDA, that type of thing. As an appraiser, you have the stability and flexibility that comes with owning your own business. So you can work part-time, full-time, as much as you like, as little as you like. You can make it a side hustle. You don't actually work for the American Society of Agriculture or Equine Appraisers. They're just simply the organization that you join to become a qualified industry appraiser. You work for yourself. Regardless of if you're interested in becoming an equine appraiser, a livestock appraiser, or an equipment appraiser, you do have to have at least 5 years of experience in that specific sector of the industry. If you're interested in learning more, you can go to ofthewest.co and search for appraiser, and those two opportunities will come right up. Or you can grab the link to each of those in our show notes because we made them really easy for you guys to grab. But either way, this is a really great opportunity. And like I said, it's something that you can do part-time, full-time. You can do it as a side hustle. There's full flexibility, which is really important for those of us who live in rural America and who have ag and Western operations or obligations that we also have to work around. Like I said, if you're interested in learning more, you can go to our website or you can grab the link in our show notes. And hopefully that's something you guys are interested in. Oh, welcome to today's episode, you guys. We have Quincy Eldridge. She is the creator, the woman behind the brand that you guys all likely know and love, Rodeo Quincy. Quincy, let's kick things off by having you tell us a little bit about where you're from, your upbringing, how you got into fashion design, and where you're at now.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, thanks so much for having me on, Jessie. I've adored you for so long, and I'm honored to be here and to tell them all about my story. So I was born in the Central Valley of California, and I was born and raised on a cattle ranch. My dad, Bill Freeman, is from a ranching family in Oregon. My mom's actually from one of the first ranching families in Nevada. And I'm the youngest of 5 with a blended family. So my dad had 2 kids, my mom had 2, and then they got married later in life and then had me. So my brother and I are actually 16 years apart in age. And then my youngest sister and I are 12 years apart in age. So I think I grew up, being a little bit more mature because of having the older brothers and sisters. And I was like the baby or the princess, as they would like to call me. But it definitely shaped like a big part of who I am, I think, being the youngest. And my dad actually is a cattle rancher, cattle trader, but he's actually one of the innovators behind online cattle trading. So growing up, he was always an entrepreneur, and I always looked up to my dad in that way. And then my mom was actually a stay-at-home mom, but she trained cutting horses on the side, and she was always really into fashion. And she actually had her own fashion brand at one point, Marvel Cowboy. So it's kind of funny because looking back, really, I took a part of, who I loved with my dad being the entrepreneur and what I loved a lot about my mom, her inspiring me with fashion. And I sort of combined those two, and it's kind of who I am today and what I'm aspiring to be.
No, you really do have such a storied family history. And one thing I love about you is you are very tied to that. Like, you talk about your family history and what that means to you all of the time. It is something that is constantly in your designs. Didn't you and Dakota even get married on, was it your grandparents' anniversary?
Yes, my grandmother Rosita and my Papa Tom got married in the same chapel on the same day in the town that was actually named after my grandmother's family, the Camarillos in California. If there's any way I can honor, family like my mother and my grandmother, we definitely do that. We're big on that. We're big on honoring them, and we're big on, leaving their legacy behind for generations to come.
Okay, well, I was going to ask this question later on, but I'm going to ask it now because we're talking about family and design, and your family is massive. And there are so many of you that are very creatively inclined. Like, you have how many cousins that are some kind of designer?
Yeah, I have a few cousins that are actually into fashion design. One of my cousins, Annie Rose Bigelow, she's actually one of my main designers. She's my little cousin. She's a really talented artist. And my grandmother, Rosita, who I talked about earlier, she was an artist at art school before she fell in love with my Papa Tom, who was the cowboy. They have like the cutest story ever, too, which probably needs to be turned into a movie. But what's so neat is that you can see my grandmother's love for the arts and fashion and creativity. You can see it throughout like the generations in her family, because multiple cousins of mine are creative and designers. And my brother is actually very creative and very into fashion. One of my sisters, she makes stained glass windows, and her house is like the most adorable thing you've ever seen. And then not only that, but we're drawn to creators because I have a sister-in-law who's head of creative at Ariat. She's awesome with fashion. And actually, Lefty's wife, my nephew, she has a brand, Lucky Livin', and she does chain stitch designs. And she's just like an incredible artist. So I'm surrounded by creatives for sure.
Note to self, if you want to be in the family, you either need to be a cowboy or a creative, like one of those two. Oh, so Rodeo Quincy's been around for what? Is it 13 years? Did I get that right?
So it's been around for this will be 10 years. But yeah, there's been a lot of shifts and changes and whatnot. But I've been designing and being creative for a while, but the actual company's been around for 10 years.
And even before you started Rodeo Quincy, you did some designing with companies like Ariat. You painted tack. Like, that's kind of how you got found by Shane, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So I was just super lucky because I had some wonderful opportunities open up for me. I sort of discovered later on in life that my passion was, designing and creating. So I started hand painting my own pieces. I was involved in rodeo and started hand painting these tack pieces for horses, and it really caused a lot of attention. I wasn't doing it to create a business or even to get the attention. I was just doing it because it's something that I enjoyed and that I love. And then shortly after, it just created this big hype. And long story short, it led to opportunities, people, finding me, seeing this unique talent that I had. It's actually pretty funny because my sister-in-law, Shane, was one of those people that I got to know with and work early on. I didn't know that she would become my sister-in-law someday, but I don't blame my brother for sneaking in there and realizing how wonderful she was. But yeah, I was able to design for Ariat. I got an opportunity for them at 18 years old to design my own line of boots and clothing. They thought, what a unique opportunity for us to bring in somebody that actually, a real rodeo cowgirl that wears, our product, and to tell her story and showcase her talents. And so that's what they did. And going into it, I wasn't thinking I was going to make a career out of it or this is where I was going to be. I was actually worried in college at the same time, wondering what I was going to do. But they opened that door for me. And I was like, whoa, it was like all of my passions were combined into this one thing. And that was the Western lifestyle and fashion. And it opened my eyes. So then by the time I was towards the end of my college career, I was like, wow, this is something that I want to do. And I think having a father and a mother being super supportive, and then again, my father being an entrepreneur, I was like, I want to try this, on my own. I have a college degree. I can always fall back on that. And so looking back, you mentioned, how the business has changed through the years, but I started hand painting these pieces and then realizing it was a hobby. And so need to make this more of a business. So then I figured out a little bit about manufacturing and how to get it made. And so then it started to turn into a business. Well, then I actually signed up for almost every rodeo trade show in the US, like the high school finals, the junior high finals, the Texas state finals. I loaded up a trailer and loaded it like with my product and drove. I think I was in my early 20s and just drove all over the state setting up at these trade shows. And that's how I started.
That is so fascinating. And obviously now, fast forward, you now have, is it two booths at NFR?
Yeah. Yep. The only trade show we do now is NFR. Yeah. And we do have 2 booths there. So, but looking back, I was just trying to, any opportunity I had, any person that I could meet. And I was literally like just started manufacturing, and it's come a long way for sure.
You know what, though? I think that that's one of those things that we all know about, but take for granted. And that is when you first start a business, you have to be scrappy and you have to hustle. Like you have no other option but to do it.
Yeah. I mean, it was either that or go get a job working somewhere else. And I knew I wanted to, Ariat had given me a taste of this, of the American dream of building something on your own and, and being a boss and being successful. And I wanted that. So I didn't know how to get there, but I knew how to work hard. My parents had instilled those ethics in me. And so I just hit the ground running, and there's been lots of transitions and pivots. The business actually started as Quincy Tack and Pelts to begin with. And so it later changed to Rodeo Quincy, and we made horse tack and we made boots, and it's transitioned from there into more of a Western apparel company, and still haven't had to work for anyone else.
Even in that time, you have done collaborations with Wrangler and you have PRCA licensing. So you have still continued to evolve, even though you own your own thing on the partnership side of things, which is really unique.
Yes. So thank you. I'm very fortunate to have had those opportunities, and it's been a wonderful thing for the business for sure.
Okay. Well, I want to get into the conversation about being creative. That's what we're talking about today. It's kind of a unique conversation because I think, especially as somebody, you're young, you're a mom, you own a business, which usually when it comes to business, you either like you're really great at the creative side or you're really great at the business side. Very few people are good at both. You are one of those who is good at both, but you don't let the business side of things detract you from your creativity. So going back to just being raised in a family of creatives, how did your mom and your family kind of cultivate that to find your own unique creative outlet?
I would say that my mom and my grandmother just really always encouraged me not to be afraid to stand out. I would say it was born in me to want to like stand out and be different. And sometimes, especially in my younger days, I was discouraged from doing so by other people. But I had a mother that instilled confidence in me and taught me, like, don't be scared to, be who you are. Don't be afraid to stand out of the crowd. And it's so funny because that's literally who I am to this day. And part of what my brand is. It's for women to empower them, to make them feel beautiful, and encourage them not to be afraid to stand out of the crowd if they want to, If that's what makes them happy and gives them joy, then who cares what others think?
Do you think there was like a specific age where you realized that creative stuff brought you joy, or is that something that you have just always possessed?
No, I definitely didn't always possess it. Looking back, there were early signs. For instance, like in elementary school, when most kids were taking notes, I was like doodling in my elementary books. And like my science project, I never got like an A, but it was like the one that would stop everyone in their tracks because it was like so creatively made, And then it wasn't until high school I took art class, and then I really didn't find interest in any of the other classes. And I started bringing home art projects, and my mom was like, "Oh, this is great. Like, who's doing this for you?" And I was like, "Thanks a lot. It's actually me, drawing this." And I remember we were working with clay and whatnot. And so it really wasn't until high school that I started like finding this passion for art and creativity. And I'd always loved clothing because I'd looked up to my mom's style and the way that she dressed, and my grandmother. But I actually went to Catholic private school where we wore uniform. So I wasn't really able to express that through clothing yet. And so really what brought it out was me getting involved in rodeo and wanting to brighten up my horse tack. And then eventually really going to college is where I like started to really put my outfits together and express it through fashion.
Wow. I cannot imagine Quincy Freeman at the time in a Catholic school uniform and not like your bright, vivacious self.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I did. I had like I'd put a big bright rose in my hair, and I'd wear like platform shoes or, crazy socks and big earrings, in high school. But yeah, it was kind of hard for me to express myself. They held me back. And then once I got to college, they let let this butterfly out. And I don't know if the world was ready for all of my brightness, but here I am.
Oh gosh. Well, it's one thing to be creative, and it's another thing to stay creative, especially in this day and age where it feels like it's really easy for people, to take somebody's work and call it their own. So, how do you continue to stay positive, or do you feel like your positive mindset and creativity go hand in hand? How do you continue to really stay in your lane and not worry about what others are doing in that realm?
Well, I think you can look at anything in life positively or you can look at it negatively. And my husband's so good about reminding me this because he's such a positive person, but you have to look at things positively. So, for instance, I always want to just put my blinders on and focus on my mission and what I'm doing. And then you'll see, for instance, like a copycat jump out there and you want to just be like, oh my goodness, I've worked so hard. But you can choose to look at it that way, or you can choose to look at it the positive way, like, wow, I must be doing something right if there's somebody out there that wants to copy me, If what you were doing wasn't making an impact and people weren't copying you, then it's like my mother always said, it's a form of flattery, really. So that's the way that I look at it.
No, it totally is. And I also think too, if people have to continually copy somebody for their good ideas, they're usually not going to be in it for the long haul. Because if you aren't willing to put in the patience and the long game of really flexing that muscle and having a good idea come to light, then you're not going to be in it when the rubber meets the road and it gets hard, because we know that all things in life inevitably do. So I always feel and it's probably a little bit different on the apparel side of things, but in business in general, if you're a listener and you think, man, I feel like this person is always copying me, I can't imagine they're going to be in business very long, because if they have to get their good ideas from somewhere else, they're definitely not going to be able to work through all the hard that comes with those good ideas.
Exactly. You have to be original. If it does make you angry, I always use that as fuel for my fire, and it makes me work harder and smarter, and it makes me be motivated to come up with the next best thing. And so that's the way that I look at it.
Okay, let's talk about the next best thing, because in the last 7 years, you have had some of life's hardest challenges. I mean, not all of them have been bad. Some of them have been absolutely beautiful, but just a lot of big changes. You've lost your grandma and your mom, both of which who were huge cornerstones in your life. You've gotten married. You've had 2 children. And we've known each other long before all of that. And I don't think that you're a different person by any means, but I know that those types of changes in life absolutely make you a different person. So how have you, one, navigated through those? But then going back to the conversation of creativity, how have you continued to be creative through a lot of those hardships?
So for sure, losing my mom has been the hardest thing that I've ever gone through. But in losing her, I've realized she's left me with 4 main beautiful things. And that's love, lessons, my family, and faith. And I've realized that every day, I miss my mom and it hurts and that I have this pain. But I've realized that the pain that I have is the love that I was able to share with her. And so I've learned to turn that pain into gratefulness and gratitude, because I'm just so thankful to have had the mother that I did and to have been able to share that kind of love, because I know not everyone is fortunate enough to experience that in their life. And the other thing is the lessons that she left for me. I didn't necessarily realize them until she was gone, but she instilled some of the most beautiful lessons, and they're lessons that I'll pass down to my girls. And it makes me step back and think, what are the new lessons too that I want to share with my girls and that they can share with generations to come? And the other thing that my mom left me with was her beautiful family, my brothers and my sisters and their kids. And I'm just so fortunate to have them. They're just some of my biggest inspirations. They're the first to knock you off your high horse, but then the first to have your back. And that's been a wonderful thing. We try and honor my mom and my grandmother too in everything that we do. We pass down their traditions. We honor them with their bright colors, with the red roses. My nephew, Lefty, that rides broncs, he has Ride Sally Ride on his chaps. And so I guess it's just, I've realized wow, what a beautiful legacy my grandmother has left behind, my mother has left behind. And it makes me excited and grateful, because I'm excited for the opportunity to pass down my legacy too throughout our wonderful family and through the generations. But then also the most important thing is the faith that my mom has left behind. She didn't take life too seriously, and she lived life to the fullest, because she knew that we aren't always guaranteed tomorrow. And so in business, especially, sometimes I like stress myself out and tend to make small things, big things. But in the end, faith is like what gets you through it all. And in the end, it's just between us and God. And that's what my mom, instilled in us. And it makes me excited and it makes me strong and it makes me fearless of the future.
Oh, I love that. And just knowing how much I loved your mother and knowing how close you guys are and how much of her shines through you, like that really is. I feel like I'm going to get all teary-eyed, but
yeah,
Sal was the best.
Yeah, she was the best. She was like my best friend and I took her everywhere with me but it's just like I'm just so honestly grateful to have had her, and have had her as long as I did. So, you just have to look at things with gratitude, I think.
In that time, did you ever find yourself in a creative rut?
All the time. And I still find myself in creative ruts. I think it happens to all creatives. I think creativity isn't something that you can just snap your fingers and have. And so I've learned throughout the years, how to motivate my creativity. And most of the time, what that entails is just taking a step away from things. Like sometimes I'll get so knee deep in the numbers of the business and stuff like that I just have to step back and take a day off. And honestly, retail therapy helps me a lot. I love to go shopping and see what, the trends are, what else is out there. Other brands, inspire me. Sometimes I'll look back through the generations at fashion trends, and that inspires me. My husband and I, we travel a lot for rodeo and that inspires me. Rodeos we go to, I might come up with a creative idea or name for a new collection and what people are wearing, on the way to the rodeo or at the rodeo. So I'm constantly inspired by the people around me and the places we go.
Oh, that is good. I always tell people I really struggle with creativity. And I think that we are all creatives at some point, whether it is like art or business, like everybody has the thing that they're good at. And so I think that that is a creative outlet. But I always say that I'm a little old lady who is like pumping a well by hand. And some weeks I will walk out there every single day and no water comes out of my well. And then another time I'll go out there and I'll pump my well and so much water is going to come out that I don't even have enough buckets for my water.
Yes, I can totally relate to that because some days I sit down to design and just nothing's coming to me. But I think that's when you just have to like step back and go do something else and come back when the water is flowing.
I think that too. And honestly, I think sometimes we beat ourselves to the point where like we just stare at a screen or try so hard to get creative that then we're almost doing more harm than good in the process. And I have always found it's kind of like a puzzle. If you're somebody who does puzzles and you get to a point where like none of the pieces look like they are going to fit together and you stand up and you go do something for an hour and you come back, instantly you see like, oh, this piece goes here and this piece goes here, but it just takes time away from the project and coming at it from a different perspective too, like maybe sitting at a different spot, but just having that different perspective has always helped me in anything that stumps me, not just the creative side of things, but anytime that I am forced to really stretch my brain and I feel like it's not where it should be, that's what helps.
Something I've found too that also helps is we talked about surrounding myself with creatives. Is especially when I'm working on an idea or a concept, I get other people's, a lot of some of Rodeo Quincy's like top designs, weren't completely my idea. A lot of them were, ideas from my team and my family. And so a lot of times you can draw inspiration and creativity from other people.
Oh, I totally think that.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about drawing inspiration and creativity from other people, who is like a style icon to you aside from your mother? Or maybe like a life icon.
Ralph Lauren is probably my style icon. Not him, obviously, but his designs and his fashion, just because I love how he pulls from, the American cowboy. And it seems like he's always going back to that. And I feel like his pieces are just so timeless and so classy. My personal style is a little bit more wilder and more eclectic than his, but I absolutely love his style. I think it's timeless and I look at him as an inspiration for what he's done and what he's leaving behind.
Oh, yes, I love that. Honestly, if you don't love Ralph, I have questions. I have questions about who you are.
Ralph Lauren has done a beautiful job in bridging the gap between mainstream and Western fashion, I feel like.
Oh, he absolutely has. Okay, well, let's end this with our rapid fire round. What is the best piece of business or personal advice that you've ever been given?
I'm going to give the best piece of advice from my dad and from my mom, two of my biggest inspirations and two of my biggest driving forces. So one thing from my dad is that he's taught me to never be completely dependent on one person or one thing. From my mom, that would be not to be afraid, to be yourself and to stand out of a crowd and don't care what people.
Oh, both of those are really, really good. If you could give people any words of wisdom and you knew that they would take them to heart, what would it be?
Treat other people how you would like to be treated yourself.
Oh, yes. The world needs so much more of the golden rule.
The golden rule, yes.
If you could go to dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would you pick?
That would definitely be, I have to say, Jesus and my mom. Can I pick two?
Yes, of course.
I know I need to say Jesus, but my mom's been gone for 4 years now and a lot's changed and, so I'm going to have to say Jesus and my mom.
Oh, that's a good answer. There's no wrong answer, but that one is definitely spot on. What is a quote that you lead your life by?
I would say it's more a Bible verse for me. And I remember in the 8th grade, we had to think of our 8th grade quote. And it's pretty funny because I would say it's still my quote. The Bible verse is, with God, all things are possible, because there will be hard days, and that's how I get through my hard days. That's where I get my strength, is through God and through my faith.
Oh, yes. Oh, you're just sending all the good stuff. I love this. Okay, last question. Let's talk about favorite things. Do you have a favorite book, podcast, like a life hack or service, something that has changed your life that you think more people need to know about?
Well, I will say podcast wise, I love Ashley Alderson's The Boutique Hub. I listen to it often. I love Ashley. I think she's a wonderful leader and just a great person. And so I love listening to all the things that different people in that industry have to say. As far as books, I'm reading right now Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, which is like the art of negotiating, because I think that's a big part of being in business. What I'm learning and being a business owner is a lot of negotiating and dealing with people. And so it's very interesting. He was one of the top negotiators for the FBI and has to deal with like people with bombs strapped on their back and whatnot. And I mean, I hope I don't ever need to negotiate to that type of extreme, but you never know. It can come in handy, Jess.
Oh, well, okay. I love both of those because Ashley Alderson, Boutique Chat, if you guys are a retailer or you own a brand, you're anything in the retail space, even like small business, you could be a hardware store selling something. And that podcast is going to be gold for you guys. It's called Boutique Chat. The host is Ashley Alderson. She is the founder of a community called the Boutique Hub. But Ashley, she is going to be a guest on the show here in a few weeks because she is one of my personal mentors. And so I'm excited to bring that conversation to all of you guys. So you're going to have to stay tuned, which I would assume you all would anyways, but stay tuned because that's going to be a good conversation.
Yes, I'm not surprised. You have got to get Ashley on here. She's wonderful.
Oh, well, and then the book that you recommended, that is one that has been recommended by guests a number of times as well. A Negotiation is huge. And so I have yet to read it. It is on my list, but I might have to prioritize it and move it up to the top because I've heard such great things from so many people.
Yes. And back to Ashley Alderson, what she is doing now, if that would have been around 10 years ago, like when I first got started, it is such a wealth of knowledge in our industry. I mean, there wasn't any of that information was available, at their fingertips like it is now. So it's just a wonderful thing she's doing for the industry.
No, the resources that the Boutique Hub provides are absolutely bar none. They are of the highest quality. They answer all the questions. If you guys, again, like I said, if you are in the retail space and you have not heard of the Boutique Hub, definitely go check them out. You'll thank us. You'll thank both Quincy and I for sure. Quincy, thank you so much. It was so good to chat with you. For people who are not following along with you, which they absolutely should be, so this is probably only going to apply to like 2 people who are actually listening, but where can they find you? Where can they go snag some Rodeo Q?
Well, we actually have an app, a free app. You can go to the App Store and download the Rodeo Quincy app for free. And we have a website, rodeoquincy.com. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram.
Well, perfect. And then, Quincy, anything else that you want to leave people with before we go?
I don't think so. Thanks for listening all the way through, and just God bless everybody on their journey. And thank you so much for having me here today.
Well, thank you so much. For those of you who are listening, I hope that we were able to spark a little dose of extra creativity for you guys. Like we have established this well into the show by now, but creativity is one of those things that comes and goes. And when you feel like you're struggling with it, nothing feels worse. So I encourage you guys to go change your perspective, go find something that inspires you, go take some time for yourself. Sometimes that is the thing. If you just take like a slow day to go do, whatever it is that brings you joy, sometimes you can find creativity in that. But you've got to get out of your box, get out of your office walls, get out of your head for sure. And it's going to come. It just may take a while. And absolutely, when the water out of your creative well starts to flow, make sure that you use that momentum, because obviously, sometimes it doesn't flow. So take it all when it comes. Thank you guys so much for listening today. This is a great conversation. As always, you guys can catch us back here next week. We'll see you later. If you loved this episode, do us a favor and share it with someone else who might find just as much value in it as you did. We're on a mission to continue to grow and strengthen the future of agriculture and Western industries, and you spreading the word helps us make more of a positive impact. It also makes a big difference when you take a minute to go rate and review the show. We can't thank you enough for listening, for sharing, and for loving Ag and Western as much as we do. We'll see you back here for our next episode.